Welcome to Warehouse Automation Matters. I'm your host, Mary Hart, and I'm here with Chris Budney, Senior Customer Solutions, Strategic Alliances, Onboarding, and Enablement at Sequoia Group to discuss preparing for peak season. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Mary, for having me.
I appreciate it. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do at Sequoia Group?
Sequoia Group is a full ERP warehousing software provider and interface. We create interfaces for different packages and softwares and hardware, robotics. We help all sorts of customers in 3PLs, warehousing, full ERP operations, programming, consulting, implementation. We love working with our customers, and so far all our customers love us. We've been around for a long time. It's a great opportunity for us to work with different people, help solve their problems, and always looking forward to make everybody else's life easier.
Thank you so much. So let's get started. Can you share some of the typical challenges that warehouses face during peak season, and what are the major stress points that require special attention?
So right out of the gate, everybody's favorite subject is labor shortages, increased order volume leading into fulfillment overloads, insufficient warehouse capacity, higher logistic costs, potential for increased returns or order errors, staff burnout. I mean, these are all the real big hot items. Lack of skilled labor, equipment breakdowns, if you're not planning for all, the heavy usage during these peak seasons, difficult managing fluctuating inventory levels due to sudden demand spikes. I mean, these are the top challenges of peak season.
And when it comes to preparing for peak season, what are the key areas that warehouses need to focus on? Are there any aspects that warehouses often underestimate but can make a big difference?
Oh, absolutely. Inventory management is your first key. Utilizing your WMS and making sure you're going into peak season, your counts are accurate. Warehouse aisles and travelways are not cluttered. Make sure putaways are done properly. Optimizing warehouse layout, ensuring sufficient labor capacity, which is a task unto itself. I mean, you've got to have that labor. You're not going to move anything without proper staffing. Automating processes where possible, reviewing and refining packaging procedures, and effectively communicating with suppliers to anticipate demand and avoid stockouts. Tracking your incoming shipments and making sure you have them scheduled as not to congest the shipping receiving yard. Let's not forget monitoring supply chain ports, which is a huge problem these days. Make sure they're all in full operation. Plan to bring products from secondary vendors and ports to avoid products stuck at ports due to strikes or weather, the hurricane destruction, things of that nature. If you haven't set up a cross-dock area, set one up for peak season for fast-moving items. You bring them in, you keep them close to the door so they can go right back out. Save time on that turnaround. So accurately forecasting inventory levels, identifying those fast moving items and planning for additional staffing needs to handle increased order volume. Communicate to staff. This is huge that people don't really look into. If you're talking to your staff, you know, explain to them that you'd like to start doing overlapping shift starts and ends as necessary. That way, during the high peak seasons, personnel, will come in a little bit early. Um, and they won't have to stay 3 or 4 hours late. They can still go home an hour or so early, but you're getting that 2 extra hour overtime. But it's working a little better when you're hiring peak season personnel. Hire them early. Don't wait until November. If you want proficient staff, you want to get them acclimated at least 30 days before peak season hits. This will help keep the stress on them slightly lower than throwing them right into the deep end of the pool. Remember, housing staff turnover rate in America right now is closing to 70%, reported from the U.S. Department of Labor. So turnover rates are incredible in warehousing and utility areas. As you come out of peak season, the one nice thing about handling it this way is you'll see who those performers are, and you may want to offer them that permanent position, not just the seasonal.
And you mentioned port strikes. Those definitely are been in the news. We've all seen them. And that leads to the need to be flexible during peak season. How can warehouses ensure they're able to scale operations up or down quickly to handle fluctuating demand or unintended things that happen like port strikes? What role does technology play in enabling this kind of flexibility?
Well, this is a great question for a couple of reasons. First off, if you're not utilizing technology and you know you should be, then you're trying to manage peak seasonality with staffing, whether throwing more people at the problem, which is hard to get, and even harder to maintain. Everybody's having that problem of, they get good staff and the staff bounces out because they want, move over to different places. Forced overtime is only appreciated by staff for the first couple of weeks. After that, it's not so appealing. Overlapping shifts to help wrap up one shift by giving a boost of staffing for an extra 2 hours is easier on staff than forcing 3 hours at the end of day. Staying later rather than staying later. It's about maintaining morale and reinforcing the staff helping you as well as they are helping the company. Secondly, and of course my favorite subject, Locus AMRs is the best technical solution to address flexibility as well as throughput. By utilizing your forecasting from your ERP or WMS of how and when peak seasons will hit, and then utilizing a Locus partner for forecasting bot needs, for short seasons to bring in more bots to increase unit pick per hours. After peak season is over, the bots can go back to Locus and normal process resumes. Utilize the peak season to take time to take the notes of what worked best at crunch time, what ratio to staff to bot area worked most effectively. You should do this to see if certain combinations work better in regular operations, and if perhaps you want to bring on, bot count for a few longer time frames, months than the peak season.
We spoke a little bit about this just now, about how there's a delicate balance between using robots and relying on human workers. How do you find the right mix, especially during peak season, to keep things running smoothly?
The identifying the repetitive tasks that the bots can handle, use the bots to do the transport as much as possible, and then freeing up the humans to manage the picking areas, set group areas to assign humans to work instead of ranging around the warehouse. Let the humans make some of the harder decisions and designate how things can utilize the robots for transport, and have them waiting for pick areas while you're assigning people to manage those specific areas instead of having personnel ranging all over the warehouse looking for where they have to be picked. Keep them in a regimented area with, say, 4 or 5 aisles, whatever, so they can handle that and just stay in the area. That way they're not traveling around wasting time or trying to find where they have to go next. Obviously with Locust, it tells them where their next stop should be. As they send off their robots, it says, hey, you should report to this aisle and area. uh, if you have digital twinning, utilize test scenarios to see what strategies work best for the workflow. If you're using Locus One, utilize your AI to determine the fastest routes for the bots to transport product through the destination. That way, you're kind of mixing of what the humans are going to do and what the bots are going to do, and rely on your technology to transport and move things as fast as possible.
While we're dealing with these busy periods, effective inventory management is absolutely critical. What are some best practices you've seen or advised to customers in terms of handling stock, replenishment, and real time tracking during peak season?
So using a true WMS system is your key. Allow the system to manage your wave planning for picking and replenishment, cycle counting. Utilize robotic via an interface with your WMS, allowing each system to handle request and response to fulfillment will get you your best results. If you don't use the WMS or robotic solution, make sure you have taken time to analyze your inventory fast movers in each level movement to identify your top 10 to 20% of your items. Based upon their size, their location, capacity, move them closer to the packing and shipping areas. This will reduce your pick time and transport time. And of course, maintain it as close as possible to 100% accuracy. Poor accuracy means poor efficiency when you're processing picking. I mean, there's just no way around it.
But while the holiday rush is often the most significant peak, we're seeing other periods like back to school, even Halloween, or special sales events through social sales that drive similar spikes. How are you telling warehouses to prepare for these multiple mini peak seasons throughout the year?
So by watching your forecasting, your repetitive sales history for forecast planning, most ERPs and WMS will give you some tools to do this. Higher elite systems will give you a planning module or tools to help you out for your planning on that need. You should be able to see these things going. Of course, it all depends on your corporate structure, if you're really kind of maintaining and watching that, or if you're being more reactive than proactive, then you're going to have a little slower uptime when trying to stay ahead of the peak rushes.
So, data and analytics are becoming more integral to optimizing warehouse operations. How can data help warehouses better prepare for peak season, and what kind of insights should businesses be focused on?
Fantastic question. I love this question. Data analytics are the key to show you all the patterns of which type of season you are dealing with. Utilizing the tools like 3D modeling of your warehouse, you can project which products will be moving in weeks to come. Thereby then, quieter times, you can move those products to easier accessible picking areas when peak season hits. Those same tools might give you forecasting of possible stock out flags in order for your buying teams to ramp up stock purchases to handle that peak season.
So, how can automation give warehouses a competitive edge during peak periods? Are there any specific types of automation or tech innovations that you think will be essential for handling peak seasons now or in the near future?
Automation can give you the competitive edge by increasing your order fulfillment speeds and your accuracy. Validating products during pick time to reduce or even eliminate invalid product picking against an order. You know, Thus also reducing return orders as well as increasing accuracy while receiving and putting away products. Identifying damaged incoming goods or incorrect products from the purchase orders. Robotics is your best innovation right now and for the future. AMRs have the fastest return on investment over the other forms of automation, such as auto store retrieve systems or conveyor systems with smart diverters, autonomous fork trucks. Those are much higher ROIs. All can be helpful, but the ROIs outside the AMRs are much longer. Instead of a 8 to 10 month ROI, you could take 18, 24, even longer, many more months to recoup your investment. Couple that with Locus's robots as a service model. Your ORR is recovered very, very quickly, and you have the option to add robots during peak seasons without a long-term commitment. Return the robots no longer needed after your peak season back to Locus, and your bottom line looks a lot better.
So, looking ahead, what steps can warehouses take now to ensure they're not just ready for this peak season, but also future growth? Since I know that warehouses sometimes will start planning for peak after the current peak ends. Are there long term strategies that you recommend that will help them stay resilient and agile?
Staying on track to keep warehouses in top shape, keeping your aisles clear, doing a day's work in a day's time. If you receive it today, make sure you gets put away today. Replenish stocking locations as soon as possible, before the location drops to zero. Bringing in the automation that will best fit your situation before peak season hits. So you'll have, all the fine tuning done and ready to go and continue to perform well after peak season is over. Uh, do your due diligence in regards to analyzing your process. How often, how long does it take to empty a trailer, a rail car, or a container? Um, should you consider, autonomous unloading equipment? If you're having such a backup or a bottleneck at that point. If you have digital twinning, run scenarios on your utilization of space. Do you need to move up for greater storage so you can get operation support of a mezzanine? If you are adding more bots, how will they work with your current warehouse workforce? Are you constantly understaffed? If your current ERP isn't doing all what it needs, do you need a WMS to best utilize your warehouse spacing, your racking types, your work zones, for your value added services or your assembly, your kitting processes? Change your fundamental process to best utilize WMS methodology. That sets up a zone for storage, picking, work areas. If you don't have any or enough cut throughs for your staff and automation to use to shorten your transport time, add them, run your test scenarios, see how much time will be saved per picking container.
Consumer expectations around speed, accuracy, and sustainability are evolving. How can warehouses meet these changing demands during peak season, and what strategies are most effective for enhancing that customer experience?
Great question. What are the latest consumer expectations? I mean, with Amazon setting the pace for same day delivery, Walmart following suit, many others trying to catch up, combination of warehouse analytics, robotics, supply chain planning, and forecasting are all becoming more and more required to stay competitive in today's marketplace. As consumers, don't we all want our orders faster? And wouldn't it be great if we really get what we ordered? Accuracy, speed at the warehouse, as well as the last mile logistics, full order tracking from time of order placement. With automation of scanning products directly into a bin or container with live validation at the time of picking, really ensures nearly 100% accuracy all the time. Working with products like Focus Origin, for example, utilizing gaming logic interface to help onboarding new staff. I mean, everybody knows how to use their phone and play games on their phone. Well, with that sort of concept of learning really speeds up onboarding of new staff. New personnel learn in their native language to work with new technologies. Thus onboarding personnel to start working in a warehouse in less than an hour instead of 4 to 8 hours before getting proficient. That is what's called upon today and required for tomorrow.
How does Sequoia Group help warehouses?
We help warehouses in numerous ways. We will go in and analyze their setup. We'll discuss about bringing in a WMS system. Most of them have, an AR integration, to help really identify some weak spots and retune how they process through. We'll do walkthroughs through the warehouse and look at, layouts and setups and is every location properly identified? Are they barcoded? Is the general operation in a good way being cleared, good for transport, not having to do drive arounds because they have a staging area at the end of an aisle, which makes them go back, turn around, go around. But there's all sorts of efficiencies that we will look at in an operation. Some of the other things we'll look at is identifying the fact that many operations in warehousing 3PLs, since they're not using a WMS, they don't really measure out all their locations. They don't identify the different types of location they have, whether it's, a racking system for pallets versus a casing loading area that has, the slide forward. So when you pull a case out, the next one behind slides down for easy grabbing. In the each picking areas, where you have smaller items, we may introduce things like a packing wall, and other robotic solutions and so forth. So we work with a lot of different vendors. Locus is our primary. We love you guys. They're the best. But we do have to figure out solutions that will work for everybody, and not everybody can handle large loads. If we have a straight pallet that may run 2,000-3,000 pounds, we obviously have to handle it with different solutions.
Before we wrap up, do you have any final tips for businesses preparing for peak season, or is there anything exciting happening at Sequoia Group that you'd like to share?
Sequoia Group is always reviewing and onboarding new products, whether it's warehousing or warehousing WMS, or robotics or other interfaces. Up and coming peak seasons, a lot of people say, "Oh, peak season is peak season." Well, they're not. They all have their slight little changes that you have to adapt for. 3D modeling and twinning and so forth is really come to fruition over the last couple of years. It's very vital if you're looking at a bigger operation and be able to look at that model and the scenarios, and all of a sudden you hit a peak spike, and it's like, okay, there's no way we're going to get everything out in a 2-shift format of a day. What can we do? Well, you can run your digital twinning and change the way you're releasing your waves for picking to see what the best scenario is that's going to streamline your time to get the highest throughput. There's always something that we can do to help people out, and that's why people bring us in.
Thank you. And thanks again to Bud for joining me. It was a fantastic conversation. And thanks as always to our listeners. We're here to help you move what matters in your warehouse.